So, but yeah, hell, yeah, I guess we can get this kind of started. I guess. Yeah, I listened to the Murray Rothbard Anatomy of the State again.
Did you
So
listen to the audio version?
yeah, the audio, which is really difficult because his vocabulary is so high,
Yeah.
and so it's like and then of course I was thinking about as he's talking, I'm starting to drift and think about different things. But yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
I've listened to it about 3-4 times now.
Yeah, I just listened to it again on Saturday, I think. Yeah.
Oh wow, okay,
Because I needed a refresher.
yeah. Okay, well, I mean, anyway, so let me go ahead and announce it, I guess, and let me see how I do on this. I've got nothing scripted, so it's going to be yay.
That's how we open all of our podcasts non-scripted.
Okay.
Luke just literally just says, "Welcome everyone to
Yeah.
episode whatever," and I'm joined
Yeah.
with my co-host.
I don't have a co-host.
No, that's fine.
Yeah, you're the guest, I guess, right?
Yeah, you just say,
Yeah.
I don't know.
Okay.
There's my guest.
All right. Let me try to do this real quick. All right.
And you don't even have to do an intro like that. You could just start talking and then intro it yourself later if you wanted to.
Well, yeah, but then you're going to get a different sound quality, and it's going to be your editing's not going to be as smooth. So, but
right.
Yeah, wow. Anyway, welcome everybody. This is Craig with the Unbeaten Path, and today I've got a guest on here from Biting the Bullet, which is the real Typo, and so here we go. We're going to start off with Murray Rothbard with Anatomy of the State, and then we're probably going to jump into probably about 10 different rabbit holes. So anyway, yeah, Tyler, would you like to say anything, kind of plug your cast a little bit if you want?
Sure. I'm the co-host of the Biting the Bullet podcast. It's I guess, it's more for libertarian veterans, comedy, political podcasts. It's just, we focus on different things that the government does, and we try to make humor out of it. It's very, I guess, anti-government in a sense, but we try to give the feeling of, if you are a veteran, then if you're back in the smoke pit, hanging out with your friends, just having a conversation. That's the kind of feel that we try to give for the podcast.
All right. Awesome. Well, thank you very much for taking the time out of your day and joining us here. So anyway, but okay, let me just jump right into this and get your opinion on the Anatomy of the State by Murray Rothbard.
Well, I think it's one of the better, especially if it's a great book to just read or listen to. I think it takes about an hour to listen to. You can download the PDF of the book. It's like 60 pages, and you can read that. And but I think it's a great book because even maybe if you don't necessarily agree with libertarians or Rothbard himself, I think it's a very thought-provoking book. And I think that it makes you think of things a little bit differently and challenges your thoughts. And if you at the end of it, like me, if you kind of agree with almost everything he's saying in the book, it really opens your eyes and makes you start looking at the government or the state in a much different light than maybe you were raised to, or what you have done in your life, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it is definitely an eye opener on this, and I was blown away. And you say it's an easy read, but I kind of disagree with you on that, because this guy's vocabulary is incredibly high.
Yeah, I guess what I just meant by easy was it takes you a short amount of time to get through it. Maybe you won't understand everything, but it'll take you a short amount of time to get through or listen to.
Now, I was doing some research on Mr. Rothbard, and he was actually born in like 1929. So he would have grown up. He was born in Bronx, New York, and he was born in 1929. So he would have seen the World War II at 15 15 to 17, 18 years old. I mean, so
Yeah.
I mean, I'm just wondering if this probably was, he was an economist. So I'm just wondering if the World War II with the Nazi regime and everything, and then post World War II, if this actually influenced his writings as far as what the government was doing. And now he never did come out and say anything about the United States. As far as the United States government. And honestly, I mean, he did talk about Nazi Germany a little bit, and
Hmm.
with by the way that they, if you look at it in a certain respect, that the Jews actually committed suicide by voting in this party.
Yeah, I mean, I think he basically proves in the first part where he says what the state is not. And he goes over that, if we're a government of the people, by the people, for the people, then that means anytime the government kills anyone, they're committing suicide because this is a government of the people. So the government's killing people. It means that it's yourself that's killing you because you're the government.
Right, right.
And he goes in and he uses Nazi Germany as an example, saying that when the Nazis started killing Jews were killing themselves because that technically Hitler rose to power through democracy.
Correct. And the stuff that I really enjoyed, I mean, it was talking about specifically how the government has a monopoly on force, or
Mm-hmm.
and can never be really held accountable for anything that they do. And
Yeah,
I mean, it was really impressive with that. And what I found also was that, I mean, okay, you start off with your federal government, your military, stuff like that. So as the military goes, I mean, you basically go into foreign countries and you impose your government or your will by use of deadly force, by use of a gun in that foreign country. And now that's technically really a kind of a shitty way to look at things. I mean, as far as, or a shitty way to do things, in my opinion. Not taking anything away from the military, but if you look at our past wars, what have we actually really done? I mean, why were we there? You know, I served in
yeah,
Desert Storm. So, I mean, the big chant was no blood for oil. Why were we really there in
yeah.
Desert Storm? So now we have the Iraq war, we have the Afghanistan war, which is still, I guess, technically continuing.
Yeah.
And I mean, but why are we there? For what purpose are we there? Can
Yeah,
you? Yeah.
I'm not exactly sure when he goes into that, but he might talk about, maybe it's in the part 3, I believe, when he's talking about how the state preserves itself. But basically, in the essence of what he does is he's going over that the government, the people in the government, basically trick or convince the people that they rule over that when another government attacks us, they're attacking all of us, and they're not just attacking our government. So because we associate our land to our country, and our country is ours, as a collective, we are all one. When you do that, any outside force that attacks us, we consider it attack on all of us. We are all being attacked. So we all must respond and do something. But instead, how you should look at it is that the rulers at the top do something, or do something wrong, or they do nothing wrong, maybe, and another government entity decides to attack them. It's not necessarily that they're attacking us. It's just that we are seen as a product of our state. So, but no one, if you break it down in reality, no one will say that they like. I mean, I ask people all the time, like, do you trust our government? And most of the time, people say no. It doesn't matter if Obama was president, Trump was president. In general, people just say they do not trust their government. And I think that's how you should look at it, because if you think about it, the government is, if they're supposed to represent you and then they do something terrible, then you're if that's the case, you should be held responsible for all the terrible things that your government's doing. But if you don't think you should be held responsible because you have no control over what they do, then anytime that another government is attacking us, it's more than like they're attacking our government. They have no problem with the regular people here. I mean, most people, like, if I go to, if China's doing something and it's the Chinese government, and we go there and slaughter a neighborhood in China, that doesn't make any sense, because it's like those people in China didn't do anything to me. It was the Chinese government that did something to me. So I think he does a really good job of trying to explain that the government propagandizes or just tricks people into thinking that we are all one together. We are a collective. So anytime any of us are attacked or anything like that, they're attacking us, all of us at once. And he basically explains that that's not how it should be, and that makes no sense to think like that.
Right. I mean, how can you be held accountable for what the government does? Because, well, according to, if you look at that logic, we are the government. Well, then, yeah, you can be held responsible. So technically, you could be held responsible for, say, the atomic bomb being detonated over Japan. So I mean, you could be held accountable for it. You had nothing to do with it. I had nothing to do with it, but yet because we are the government, we should be held accountable for it.
Yeah,
but that's not how it works. And
and there's a lot of ways that the state, I don't know if it's intentional or if it is intentional, but there's a lot of ways that the state legitimizes itself. There's another part in the book where he talks about for some reason, there's a huge connection between the state and intellectuals into our society.
Yeah.
And they, in the state, basically, they need the intellectuals, because if they don't have these intellectuals legitimizing themselves, then it's hard to control the masses or convince the masses. Now, even no matter what government you are, you have to have majority of your people's support, even in a dictatorship or even in especially a democracy, which is easier to understand that way. But you need to have your majority of your people's support, or you're not going to exist. So
your power would be fleeting, right? Yeah.
Yeah, and they have to have a connection between their intellectuals and the society to convince the people that either this government is better than the other options, or this is the best option we have right now for our society.
Oh, correct. Yeah, correct. I mean, yeah, even in go back thousands of years, the governments at that time, or the states at that time, would actually control their people through use of religion.
Yeah, it's very common. I mean, nowadays you can look at it. I kind of think that the climate change crisis gets blown way out of proportion, and there's a lot of people, a lot of scientists that want the state to step in to do something. So now, without people even mentioning it, it legitimizes that we need the state to protect us from climate change. And I mean, I don't really know. I'm not an expert on climate change, so that's not like my full-fledged theory on that. But I think that there is some truth in that, because I think there is some things that the scientists want the state to enforce, and maybe they do believe that. Maybe they actually do believe that. But the state wouldn't be associating with those people if they didn't believe that. And I think that and I think Murray Rothbard even explains why do some intellectuals do that, because it's clear that the state needs the intellectuals in our society, but it's not so clear why the intellectuals need the state. And he basically says that some intellectuals, without the state, they would probably not survive in a free market. I think that's kind of true, because there is a lot of, taxpayer money that goes to different science research and different things like that. And I think some of those things probably wouldn't exist if the state didn't exist. So you have intellectuals that are, they get treated like they're normal researchers. They're the top scientists in the world, and they live the basically live like kings and queens with our kings and queens because the state legitimizes them.
Right, right. But I mean, do you think that if it was and I'm going to pick on libertarian societies, a libertarian society, that if climate change is actually in effect and happening, do you think in a
Hmm.
libertarian society that we would be able to take care of this? Because in my opinion, a libertarian society is actually everybody does what they want. I mean, as long
Sure,
as it doesn't infringe on somebody else. I
sure.
mean, in a really basic nutshell. So
Mhm.
would everybody get together and say, hey, look, we've really got to focus on pollution control. We need to get rid of the fossil fuels. We need to clean up our oceans. I mean, do you think as a society that the libertarian society could actually accomplish that?
So my answer to that is yes and no. I think one, you would, without compulsory enforcing everyone to be a contributor to that. Sure, there's probably going to be plenty of people that I don't believe in that hokey pokey magic climate change stuff, like whatever.
Right.
But there's already examples of this happening in our society now. I mean, one of the number one charities that people donate to is for climate change. Um,
Okay.
Also, the number one contributor to quote unquote climate change in this country is our U.S. military. They're the number one contributors to it, and the fact that nuclear energy has probably been one of the top proven things to help. It's cleaner energy. It's safer. It produces less pollution into the air, but our government has basically a monopoly on that, and it's harder to make nuclear energy or nuclear power plants. They even restrict other countries from doing that under the auspices of them not being able to create nuclear weapons. Um, Nuclear energy, as scary as it does sound to people, because it can be used for the worst decisions and crimes and mass murder we've seen in our entire history, I would say. But it also can be used for cleaner energy, and the state has a monopoly on it, and they actually prevent people from uh, using it. I mean, it's very
Well,
obvious, I
you got
think,
you
in a
got to you
lot.
got to think too that if you go nuclear power, and I'm talking about energy, your OPEC nations and stuff like that are definitely going to fight this. I mean, it's you know
I
fossil
mean,
fuels
yeah,
versus your coal mining industry, your oil industry. They're going to fight it because they're
yeah.
not
I
going to
mean,
make any money.
yeah, exactly. And then I mean, I think anyone would agree. I think at least most people would agree at some level the oil companies are in bed with our government. I mean,
Absolutely.
maybe I think it's probably a lot worse than a lot of people do think, and I'm sure there's some people that they don't think it's that much, but they probably think it's at some level. And but I mean, it's just clear like these people are in bed together, and if there is a cleaner, more efficient way to produce energy and power that will also be less pollution, but the people that are in bed with our government will lose a crap ton of money from that. It's pretty obvious on what side the government will choose to be on. The people that are funding their campaigns and getting them reelected every year,
Yeah.
or this new cleaner energy that will take away money from their contributors.
Now, I did. You just mentioned candidates and re-elections and elections and stuff like that, which I hate jumping off on this tangent, but I did recently just see a post, and man, for the life of me, I don't remember where it was at or who said it, but they were talking about libertarians should not focus on a presidential election. They should focus more on a representative or Senate elections and local elections and start from there.
Um,
Which, yeah, go ahead.
yeah, so I kind of agree with that in a sense because I think local elections are a lot more important just in general onto people, because the local elections actually have more of an effect on your way of life more than the president, the Senate, and the House does. Now, they still have effect on your life, don't get me wrong, but the local elections it directly affects you. Um,
Right.
I think that there is a lot of truth to that. And I would say that most of our, at least how it's supposed to be, most of our country's power resides in the Senate.
It's
So
supposed to be. Right. Right.
if you really want change to come, then it might be better to focus on the Senate and the House, because the president, well, they're not supposed to be able to do a lot with their position unless they have approval from the House and or Senate.
Right.
So I kind of agree with that sentiment, in a sense. But as the years go on, the president keeps taking more and more power and more responsibilities that they were never intended to have. So it becomes kind of hard for me to justify which one would be better or worse. But overall, I still think local elections are more important. I think that in your city alone, if you can control how people's way of lives are in your own city, I think it can have massive effect on and then change throughout your state, and then so on and so forth.
That's yeah, and Rothbard actually touches on that, where he was talking about I want to say Calhoun. Is that correct? Where
Yes.
yeah, he actually talks about where the lower level government or lower level state can
Hmm.
actually veto that type of power. So like the federal government says, hey, you've got to do this. Well, the state basically says, you know what, we don't really believe that. We're going to operate the way we want, in a
Yeah.
sense, and that's
Um,
yeah.
yeah. I mean, that was supposed to be the intentions from the founding of our government, especially when they did create a federal government. The checks and balances part was also the checks and balances between the states and the federal law. Now, federal law was supposed to be there to maybe enforce whatever they thought was okay, but states did have the right to refuse to enforce those laws, and that's still true to this day. I mean, with the legalization of
Perfect.
drugs,
Perfect. Yeah.
marijuana, and I mean, I think Colorado has legalized mushrooms and other
What?
psychotics. Yeah,
Really? I did
and
not know that.
yeah, I think Colorado has gone the farthest to legalize most drugs. Besides San Francisco, I think maybe they didn't legalize it, but they decriminalized all drugs. Um,
I
but
heard something about that. Yeah.
yes, but whatever. What I'm saying is that the federal law is like you can't even smoke marijuana, and you already see multiple states throughout our union, like California, Illinois, all legalizing it. Even the medical use is supposed to be
Illegal.
illegal, but multiple states have done that. So you even yeah, so you still see examples of that today. I mean, there's plenty of federal laws that I mean people probably just don't even know about, and states just don't enforce them. And but you'll probably see the reverse too, where like federally there might be something legal, and then the state will make it illegal, and it just depends on, and that's why your state actually has more power over the people than the federal government does.
I mean, should it be the state has more power, or should it really be more of a county or even city should have more power over the
Yeah.
people? And I mean, because I'm from Illinois, and I'm telling you, the government here is crap. I
Hmm.
mean, with the I mean, I'm not a Democrat by any means, but this guy is completely manipulating the COVID situation to the benefit of his family's businesses. And
Yeah.
I mean that he should be arrested, in my opinion. He should, because this is not a victimless crime. This is a victim. I mean, there are all kinds of victims in the state of Illinois,
Yeah. I mean,
and right,
it's very common to see states with a high population city that basically dictate the rest of the rules for the elections for the rest of the state. Um, it's just like how Southern Illinois is probably completely different than the way of life in Chicago. is the same thing for New York City and upper parts of the New York State.
Upstate New York, yeah.
I mean, those people probably have nothing in common, and I guarantee that upstate New York has a lot. Will get along with Southern Illinois people a lot easier than they get along with people from the city. It's just because people live in their their country life, and they want to be left alone. I think most of them just want to be left alone, and the state introduces all these new laws and stuff that come from liberal ran cities, and they basically control the whole state.
Right.
And yeah, and I
It's,
think it
it's like
happens throughout all states.
right. It's like Chicago has more population within the Chicago and the greater Chicago area.
Yeah.
They have more people in there than the entire rest of the state. So when it comes to elections and when it comes to laws and stuff like that, that are being voted on, it's whatever Chicago wants. And now there is a movement, Illinois separation movement, that actually will split. Which the only problem is, the only problem is you can't do it financially. The southern half of Illinois will die because of money.
Why would they die?
Well, money wise, financially, they would die. They don't have the tourism. They don't have, you would have to create an entire infrastructure just based on money.
I think that's a false idea. I think that they actually trick you into believing that you need them, because if you separate from them, that's a bunch of tax cattle that basically go away from them. Without these major cities, after they have all of these, or the state, after they have all these crazy different tax raises and taxes on different things, they need more people to contribute to the taxes, or eventually it will fail. Wow. And that's why I think that like Southern Illinois splitting away from Chicago would actually benefit Southern Illinois a lot more than and then I think it will harm Chicago a lot more, because all these tax incentives that they created based on tax revenue will start to disappear, and they actually rely on those, and those things actually is what a lot of people need to get reelected. And I think that Southern Illinois would be a lot better off. I do
too. I mean,
I don't think you need any sort of, people think that you need tax revenue, but the market provides a lot more than people expect.
That's really interesting. I did not think of it that way. Yeah, I'd really like to maybe in the future get a hold of a Illinois separatist. And
I mean, those separatist type people all over. I know California has 3 or 4 different separatist movements, and different ways they want to. Basically, it's the eastern side of California wants to separate from the western liberal coast of California.
Well, yeah.
The same is true in not Seattle. Portland. Or Washington. That the state of Washington. That's what I'm trying to say. There's a bunch of. Usually, you'll see a lot more separatist movements when it's liberal controlled cities against their country or urban land people that want to separate from these cities, because they basically have no say in their own politics,
right?
And they live under a dictatorship through democracy.
A democratic dictator.
Yeah, and you have no say in who your leader is, and every year it's the same party that gets elected.
Yeah,
and I mean, it's just because you're landlocked with these people, and even though you have nothing in common with them, and the landlocking on the borders are arbitrary. They were made a long time ago, and it was separated at a time for certain reasons, but now they just don't hold up anymore.
That is, I never really even thought of that. Like it, I have to definitely do some research on that. But yeah, I mean, it's but I mean, let's take Rothbard down to even a more local. Because the federal government has the monopoly, or the state has the monopoly on force. Okay. Now we talked a little bit about the military, and their use of force, and they're exempt to the most part, except for murder. Okay. what about your police force?
Well, I think the same thing is true for the police force. I think the military can get away with a lot more just because it's happening abroad in a lot of in countries that you don't necessarily care about, and two, it's happening when it does happen. There's not that much news coverage as people see. So even though I think the military is much more violent and gruesome than our police force here is in America, um, it still reigns true, though, that our police force does get away with things that normal, regular people would not get away with. And I mean, it just makes sense that in that way, in that regards, because the police is an agent of the state, and the state, does everything they can to protect their own. Now that there is some cases that they do, I guess, sacrifice some to the mob, but I think a lot of things that police do, they're enforcing rights that are a clear violate, or they are enforcing laws that are a clear violation of our constitutional rights.
Absolutely.
And I think that really showed when the lockdowns happened. Now, there were cases of sheriffs, a couple of sheriffs across the country that stood up and were like, I'm not enforcing these, basically they said, bullshit lockdown rules and these mask mandates. But that was only about 10 max. There's only 10 of them that said that. And the rest of the police forces and the sheriffs just looked at that law and they're like, okay, if you say so. So I think people need to be very cautious and not to blindly support police, because I have no problem people supporting the military or the police or anything like that. But once you start to blindly support these people, then that means everything they do is justified. And when you set that tone, the state has a monopoly on force, can start to do things that are completely evil and start to get away with things that are that most any normal person, that if you take off that uniform, any normal person would be thrown into a cage for.
Right.
So
like putting people on trains.
Yeah, I mean,
exactly.
You'll start. I mean, people. The road to hell is paved with good intentions.
Right.
And as much as like maybe a lot of police and maybe these incidents that police are involved in, that those 50-50 iffy ones, it's like, oh man, I don't really know. It's kind of hard situation. I don't know what I would do in this situation. I mean, I think you still need to take cautions and use and enforce our laws today and go through our court systems like anyone else would go through, because you start, allowing these little bits and pieces of tyranny falling through the start leaking into your house, then eventually, if you don't do anything about it, your whole roof's going to come down of tyranny, and that's not going to look good. And I hate, I don't make the comparison of Nazi Germany because I don't think we're anywhere near that yet.
No.
But it all starts somewhere, and you have to. It's not just an easy route. Like, it's not overnight. The Jews are coming, or they're coming for the Jews. Like, it took years and laws and the correct people to get elected. Like, I don't think Donald Trump's this dictator, but you don't know. You have no idea 10 years from now who's going to be president.
Correct. Yeah.
So if you allow a president or the police to get away with something now, and 10 years later, there's an actual Nazi, let's say an actual Nazi takes over the government or the police force, and you just let the good guys that made a mistake get away with things, but now they see that as an opportunity to seize power and do whatever they want.
Well, we did it 10 years ago. Might as well, let me take it a step further, which is my whole statement on COVID. It's kind of like, okay, let's see how far we can push the boundaries and stomp all over the First Amendment rights. And okay, so right now, we're not really okay. That's fine. We'll back off a little bit. 10 years from now, when a pandemic or something to that effect, they can even go further. And
yeah, I mean, it's very common throughout our history for when people are afraid or there is a time of crisis that government seizes power.
Yep.
And their excuse is, oh, well, it's just in this time of crisis that we need to take control over this right now. This is for your own benefit. This is for your security.
Yeah, so your safety is our number one part. Right.
that fails for two reasons. Because if you give up your security or your freedom at one point in time, then you're for security, then you're probably going to lose both. And two, it fails because once you give that window of an opportunity for the state to take power in a certain crisis, then 10 years, 10, 20, 30 years from now, who's to say they now, especially right now with the COVID, I think that it's probably split. Maybe, I have no idea, but there's a lot of people that don't like the government's reaction to this right now, and they think they're overstepping their bounds.
Absolutely.
So now, let's just say that, the next crisis that comes, and it's nowhere near this as bad as the pandemic, but the government overplays it as it is, and now they take more control, and so. And then their excuse would be that, the government shouldn't be doing this. And they're going to look back at this time 10 years ago and be like, well, we had to do it for the pandemic then. We're just doing it now because we're trying to save you from this mass bee swarm coming over our country or whatever.
Yeah, right, exactly. And I mean, and that's one of the conspiracy theories is that right now, human population, is actually getting to what is called like max population, to where the earth can where the earth can no longer support the amount of people that are here. So right now they're trying to get the scare into everybody. And 10 years from now, when we do hit max population, they can actually release possible. And this is kind of really getting into the fourth dimension, if you will. But yeah, they can release more of a potent virus at this time to kill more people, where it would be the Spanish flu, of the 21st century, to eliminate. If the more population you eliminate, so now we're no longer at max population, and we've got enough food for everybody. We've got enough resources. So that's basically, in my opinion, I kind of agree with that.
So my thing is so what a lot of people like to do, especially when they're criticizing the state, is they'll either make them the evil geniuses that people lay them out to be, or they're the stupidest people ever, and we have no idea how they got elected.
Right.
So if you ever got, I fall victim to that too. I do it all the time, and this is probably a normal thing that most people do. But I try to lean on the fact that they're ignorant. I think that they're just stupid. I don't think that it's this evil, long out drawn plan. I think that they overplayed their hand because I think some of them were scared, and I think the reaction to their populace is what freaked them out. I think that because there's a senator, or not a senator, House Representative Thomas Massey, who was on a podcast recently, and he voted for this the stimulus bill, I think. And he's more of a libertarian friendly candidate or politician, and he's usually against all this government stuff, but he polled his own constituents and asked them what they wanted, and he said and he put it in two different ways, and overwhelmingly his constituents like, we need this government money or we can't survive. And even though he was against government spending, and he was against, he's usually against government taking power in any way they can, he was backed in a corner because that's what his constituents wanted. So I don't think that it's this. If any sort of evil thing comes from anyone, it comes from the corporate press. I think the corporate press has an agenda, and if there's any sort of manipulation or propaganda that's being sent out for the states to take power, it's coming from the corporate press more than anything. I think they have an agenda. I don't know exactly what it is, but they seem to favor wars and missile launchings, and anytime a government overseas collapse, they seem to be in favor of those things. They seem to be siding with the Democratic Party, which in my opinion is the current war party. So I don't think the politicians are necessarily stupid. I think there's some of them that are in on the game, and I would call them the establishment. and I think there's some of them that are in there. I think like Hillary Clinton, the Hillary Clintons, the Barack Obamas, the Joe Bidens, the Nancy
Oh, ho,
Pelosi's,
ho, ho, ho,
Chuck
ho.
Schumer's.
Yeah, I mean, really, Joe Biden? Does he even know that he's running for president?
Uh, I'm pretty sure that the first presidential debate is tomorrow, and
Tomorrow, you are correct. Yes.
I am a little excited to watch that one.
Heck yeah. Hey, now is he? Are they debating on Joe Rogan, or is it going to be a televised deal?
No, Joe Rogan never responded to the debate on Joe Rogan, so they're not doing that. They're doing the old format where they debate
Oh,
on. I think the first one's actually on Fox News, so it probably won't be as easy for Joe Biden as his CNN debates or question airs have been. So he might get a little pushback, but I still think the Fox News is basically the corporate press, just a little bit more right leaning.
right.
And then the next one I think is on CNN. So
Yeah.
I don't really. Their topics that they're going over though are like the COVID response, I think healthcare, and a couple other things that the violence in the streets. So they're going to both have to address basically the mobs burning down cities.
Hmm. Was it? Didn't wasn't there a politician that even said to burn it down here recently?
It wasn't a politician.
Okay.
It was a liberal, I believe, writer
You're
for
right.
some sort of author or writer for some news outlet. And yeah, he basically after Ruth Gator Ginsburg died,
That's it.
Trump got another Supreme Justice pick, and basically the guy said that if they try to rush a pick through before the election, that they're going to burn the fucker down. Is his
Right.
exact words.
Right. Right. That's what it was. It wasn't a It was, yeah. What was he? He was.
Some
Yeah.
writer or editor for like the New York Times or something like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. Probably Washington Post.
Yeah.
I can't stand that paper. But anyway, yeah. I mean, it's. I don't know, man. I mean, it's everything's going crazy. You know, you got your COVID. Your numbers aren't jiving on either side. I mean, the numbers are like minuscule on one side, but then on the other side, you know, they're projecting like 50 million deaths, you know, which we're not even
Yeah.
close to, you know.
Yeah. I mean, it really surprised me was because the numbers of sure, let's just say that COVID was as scary as they said it was at first. Well, it's play. I mean, the goalposts keep changing for what the goal is. I mean, it used to be that we had to flatten the curve, and we flattened the curve. I mean, months ago we flattened this curve that they kept talking about. Now they just keep changing the goalpost. I mean, different states said that when we get down to 100 cases or less in a day, but it's like like in Florida, for example, the cases that are people keep citing this from an article saying that there's 100 cases a day still being coming out of Florida. Well, it's not even 100 cases in a day. It's 100 cases being reported, but some of those reports date back 2 months or a month prior to the day itself.
Oh, wow.
So the arbitrary goal that our state representatives keep pushing is almost unreachable. And to think that we could even reach these goals, and I mean, and once you open back up, I mean, you're going to get more cases. I mean,
Right.
once you have the flow of more people in contact, the cases are just going to go up. You can't stop that. And so they'll try to push these lockdowns for as long as they can. I mean, a lot of people are betting on the election, and I'm starting to think that way too. But I
I mean,
think I
okay.
was surprised.
Now
I was
you're
just surprised that how willing and how everyone complied with these laws so quickly, and how we still are doing it today.
well,
I'm
people
very
are scared.
surprised.
Right. People are
Yeah.
scared. I get that. And I mean, fear is a highly motivating factor.
I
Period.
mean, yeah, I mean, when you're just think about this on a personal level. If you're in a crowd, in a room somewhere of 10 people, and 10 people all have this one thing, and you don't have it, you're going to feel out of place. You're going to feel weird. And you're going, and then if those people start looking at you like you're crazy, like, what are you doing? Like, that's very powerful. That's
Oh
a lot
yeah.
more powerful than people think it is. I mean,
Yep.
there's some people that can be like, oh, I don't care, I'll do what I want. And and I think that that's true to an extent. But I mean, if you're surrounded by people every day that, let's just say, wears a mask, and they're all supporting these masks, and they shame other people when they don't wear them, and public shaming is a really a powerful tool.
Oh yeah.
And if you're walking around and you're, the outsider, the different one, people tend to not like you or look at you different. But sometimes, you don't wear a mask, and sometimes you get some people that come up to you and you're like, hell yeah, man, like, but they'll have a mask on, and
Right.
you'll be like, oh wow, like, that this guy wants to do exactly what I'm doing and not wear the mask, but he's afraid to. And I think most people are just afraid. Like, most people don't want to deal with this crap. They just want to go to the grocery store, get their food for their kids, and go home. They don't want to
Right.
get recorded and thrown on social media. They don't
Well,
want to get yelled at by some stranger. They
did
just want to get their stuff and go home.
did you see that video where the lady was sitting in the bleachers?
Yeah, and
And
a cop
well,
came and arrested her.
he wasn't a cop. He was a
Uh,
security officer for the school.
I think they later confirmed that he was actually a cop.
Oh, really? Okay. Now I didn't
Yeah.
hear that. Okay. But I mean, think about this. She is sitting by
Well,
herself.
yeah.
I
Well,
mean, not well with her family.
yeah. So she's sitting. It's just like her and her, I'm assuming, mom or whatever.
Yeah.
And there was no one else around them. And I'm pretty sure it was a cop. And the only reason I say that is because there was a picture that someone put out, and it's him, that same cop, in front of the police station, standing next to 4 people. And guess what? They're all not doing.
Wearing mask.
They're not wearing a mask, and they're outside, and all 4 of them next to each other. Like, I don't even think that's a ridiculous thing to do. I think people should, if you want to wear the mask, fine. If a business requires you to wear a mask, well, fine. You have to wear a mask if you want to use that business, fine. But the state mandate, the very scary thing is once you make something a law, you're basically saying that we have to kill people over this to enforce it. Once
Right.
you make it a law,
Well, once he used a taser. Okay, taser just like mace. Okay, are considered to be a deadly force. Sorry about that. I think my headphones just died on me.
oh,
Yeah. So anyway, I mean, the anytime that you use a taser or mace, anything like that, it's considered deadly force because people can die. Okay.
yeah,
So in a sense, that security officer or law enforcement officer, or whatever the heck he was, he went there. Now I couldn't hear what she was saying, but I mean, regardless, did she really need to possibly die from this? You know?
no, I mean, did she have to be kidnapped and taken down to a jail cell over not
Detention
wearing
center?
a
Yeah.
mask? Like, I mean, if you and the most messed up part about this, I think, is 2 things. If you look on the field where you see the cheerleaders doing their little cheer next to each other, none of them are wearing a mask. Not one of them is wearing a mask. And the cheerleaders on the field.
Right.
And what I thought is a meme that's already going around is when Dr. Fauci or whatever was at some ball game, some professional baseball game back a couple months ago, and he's sitting there next to his wife and someone else, and he has a mask on, but it's under his chin.
Right.
And it just goes to show that these bureaucrats, they don't have to live, the life like this. They can live comfortably and take their mask off whenever they want, whenever they please. But once someone, some poor white woman from some beat town in, like, I don't know, wherever the hell they were,
Right.
trying to watch their little brother's football game or whatever, and they're going to send a police or security force over to, like, basically rip her out of her seat and mace her until she complies. And it's like, Like they're setting this example that it happens all the time, but the bureaucrats set the law. Doesn't mean they have to follow it. But
Right.
if any of their constituents or people under them that don't follow the law, they will bring the force of that law down on them hard and fast.
Right. But now, okay, why isn't the media picking up this? I mean, they want to pick up to where, certain individuals are being shot. And when there's a huge outcry on this, why is the media not picking this up? I mean, that's
Because, in my opinion, the corporate press is the enemy of the people. So they only pick up on stories that will either divide us or divide us, basically. I don't think there's really much else. They'll pick up on basically any racial division that comes from a story. That's what they pick up on. But it also has to fit their narrative. Their
right.
narrative has to be, now if it was reversed, let's say that, because that was a black cop or security guard that was arresting this young white lady. Now if the roles were reversed, where it was a black female and a white guy, I'm sure that would be on the news. I'm sure you would.
It may have.
Maybe not completely, but I'm sure you would have saw it, more of it, and it would have been pushed as a racist narrative. The only thing is that it might not be on is because she wasn't wearing a mask, and that's against the narrative as well. You have to believe that cops are out there slaughtering black people. You have to believe that you have to wear a mask to save lives. You have to believe that the white man is the oppressor, and that's the only way it works. It can't go the other way around. And so I think that's why you won't see that incident on the news. I think it was in the local news, but I don't think it was in made.
Well, it wasn't put into any type of perspective as where law enforcement is just doing what they want. It was put into, this lady was wrong. She wasn't wearing her mask. If it went to any type of media, I mean, so
the narrative.
Did you see the video, which was from the news, about the people going to church being arrested? What the Idaho.
Yeah, Moscow, Idaho.
Yeah.
I mean, that was insane. I'm pretty sure the main guy that got arrested is actually running. He's in this election, this cycle, running against either the city council or the mayor of that city. And I mean, basically what happened is just it was a group of, they were predominantly white people, but that shouldn't really matter.
No, I don't think
they were standing outside it looked like their church in a parking lot, not wearing masks, not social distancing, and they were singing hymns.
I thought they were social distancing. I thought there were marks on the pavement to where they were all 6 feet apart.
Maybe they were. They looked like that there was some space. I'm not really sure.
And it looked like it was now I didn't know about the one guy that was running for office, but it does look a little staged.
Oh, I'm sure this was a form of protest.
Yes.
And I think, they're, obviously this shouldn't be a protest because they're just exercising their First Amendment right as freedom of assembly and in freedom of their religion practice and whatever they want to do. But I think it was as it may came off as like, hey, we're just, practicing our religion. I think it came as a statement of like, we're going to do this regardless of what you guys do. And I'm not sure how, but there was a couple cop or officers that showed up and arrest, I think like a half a dozen of those people. I don't know how they picked who should be arrested, because technically all of them should have been arrested.
Right.
They're not wearing masks.
Well, they're probably like, oh crap, we don't have enough jail cells for all these people.
But it's a very, I think, eye-opening and like sad reality. Because those people in that video, when they're being arrested, they kept telling them, like, we're the people that support you. We're the churchgoers that love you. We're the churchgoers that defend you all the time. We're always the ones that first to have your back when the media or anyone comes after you. We always defend you guys. Where they asked them, where were you when the BLM protest was happening downtown here? You didn't arrest those people, but the mayor's. Yeah, the mayor sends you to arrest us, and we're standing in a parking lot singing a church hymn, and I think it's very eye-opening, and I think some people just, it's a hard reality to swallow, but police are not always going to be on your side.
Yeah.
And it's an
Well,
unfortunate
they
reality.
they are an arm of the government, okay, whether it be a local government or a federal government or whatever. But I
Hmm.
mean, we're talking, the mayor is the one that came out and said, basically arrest these people,
Yeah.
and I mean it because it went against his direct order,
Hmm.
and plus I'm sure with the guy being his running mate or not running mate, excuse me, his opponent, in an up and coming election, I'm sure this was going to be an easy way to say, well, you can't be mayor because you got a felony.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah,
Sure.
right,
I think it helped the guy running more than it hurt him. But I mean, if you just look at the levels of how the bureaucracy happens, it's the mayor sends the police. The mayor gets to pick the police chief for
exactly,
the city. So if that guy didn't do it, he lost his job. So
absolutely,
so you have to understand, like, even maybe this guy doesn't agree with it, but he's got a family to feed. He's got a job and a retirement he wants to pursue. So it is a tough situation for that chief of police. Don't get me wrong, but how far are they willing to go to protect their job?
right. Well, I mean, think about the officer in the. Oh my goodness, is it? I can never say her name right. Brianna.
Breonna Taylor shooting.
Brianna. Yes, Brianna.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I mean the officer that jumped in or knocked down the door and was fired upon and then fired back. Okay.
Hmm.
He was following orders. Okay.
Yeah.
It was a warrant by the government saying, hey, look, jump in. I don't know if they knocked or didn't knock. I have no idea. But, I mean, he had a decision to make. One, it's a victimless crime. Okay.
Hmm.
It was over drugs.
Hmm.
And, now two, the guy, that didn't get hit, her boyfriend fired first, I'm
Hmm.
assuming. And, now she's dead because of a stray bullet. So they blindly fired into a dark room. Okay.
Yeah.
Which probably wasn't the best decision to do, obviously.
Yeah.
But I mean, now this officer could have said, you know what, man, this is a victimless crime.
Yeah.
I don't need to do this. This is wrong. But I mean, again, he may have had a family. He's, working a job.
Oh
He
yeah.
was told to. It was sanctioned by whatever higher level. It was actually sanctioned by the courts to go in. It was a no-knock warrant.
Hmm.
Granted, the warrant was incorrect as far as the location. I believe there was an issue with that.
I'm not too sure on that anymore.
Yeah,
I've
yeah.
seen multiple conflicting stories. I've seen some where it says it was wrong, and I've seen some where they actually wanted the warrant on that house because they were trying to go after the boyfriend.
Okay. I mean, and then it goes to your media. Which
Hmm.
lie do we believe?
Yeah.
I mean, exactly. And I mean,
I mean,
it's
yeah. There's
terrible.
there's three sides to every story,
Hmm.
and the now there's conflicting evidence and conflicting stories with the police officer stories. There's conflicting evidence and story with the Breonna Taylor's boyfriend, and I don't really know what the truth is. It's a very hard situation to break down, but let's just say, if in my opinion, overall, I think drugs are a victimless crime, and we shouldn't be going after people for doing victimless crimes like that. But in that case, uh, oh, where was I going with this?
Uh-oh.
Oh, in that
Uh-oh.
case, that the now if those officers, before they executed this no knock warrant, if they chose not to do it, they would probably have been fired. And
Right.
um, we've seen examples of this throughout the country. There's been a couple cops that, when they were trying to enforce these lockdowns, that actually said, "No, I'm not doing this." And there was a couple that made a couple videos that went viral online, and the police. I can't remember this exact case, but this guy basically made a viral video, and he was like, "This is this is against the Constitution that we swore to uphold and defend. We can't be doing this. And he's just, he's been on the police for like 3 years. He's the bottom of the barrel guy.
Yep.
And basically, the city council or the mayor office got in contact with the police chief, and the police chief told them, like, you have to take that video down, and then we're all good. And the cop refused to take the video down, so they fired him. He lost his job, and now he's basically kind of a martyr for people that support him, or I guess liberty lovers, because he just stood up against this. But it's very telling that what's going to happen if you don't just do your job, go along with the rules that we lay down, you will lose your job. And that's a very scary reality, especially when you're very dependent on that job.
Right. Well, it's the same thing. Now I did 26 and a half years in corrections. Mm-hmm. And I mean, there's same thing. I mean, if you don't do, granted it's union and the union will fight for you, but sure. I mean, if you don't do your job, even though you don't believe in it, you're going to get fired. And I mean, a state job is a pretty decent living,
Oh yeah. I'm sure you've probably heard that at the prison, but I've heard it from people that were ex-cops, and I've heard it a lot in the military, is that people are just going for that retirement, right, trying to get their 20 years. Especially when you get closer to that date, you keep your head down a lot more and try to stay out of trouble, because you don't want to risk losing that pension, that retirement.
Pension. That's right.
It's a big deal. It's security for you and your family, and like you don't want to give that up. That's a hard thing to give up, especially if you get over halfway there.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I'm not going to make it, so you go back. Right.
Yeah. So it's a hard situation that you put people into, but I think that's why you see a lot of officers comply with these, because they don't want to lose their job and payment and security and retirement and healthcare for their family if they want to be principled and stand up against these mask mandates or lockdowns or the drug war or whatever it is. They don't want to lose that. That's right. It's a very real and hard decision you have to make. Now, when the police officers do decide to side with these laws and to protect themselves, I'm not saying it's an easy decision, but understand, like, when you do that, sometimes it's not going to work out well for the people's perspective and how they view the police, because they'll think that you'll just do anything the state does to protect your security, and that's not necessarily a good thing either.
No, it's not. And I mean, it happens. It does happen.
Mm-hmm.
You will do it. A lot of people will do anything for that pension. I mean, period.
Yeah.
I mean, if it means, shooting a 5-year-old kid over in Afghanistan, well, you
never know.
Right.
And it's, and then people, and the worst thing is like the jobs like the military and police, and sometimes I believe they almost shouldn't exist, at least the full extent of the job. Like there's no way that the police should be in charge of enforcing all these different laws all the time. Like, there's just so many different laws and so many different genres of the law that I think that it's hard. And that's why you find a lot of police officers that have, PTSD, they have a lot of different problems, because I'm sure there's terrible, terrible things they see all the time. And it's not anything that, they deal with the worst and lowest of our society all the time.
Right.
And also there is some cases that, it's a tough situation and you didn't want it to end that way, but you had to react fast or you could have lost your life. And taking a human life is not something that people can easily cope with a lot of the times, especially if it's a young teenager or child.
Yeah.
So I think that it's very hard to be a cop. And I think that there's a lot of, if we're going to have cops, I think there should be some, I don't really know exactly, but some way to break down the roles a lot different, because it seems like a cop has to deal with a traffic stop, but also has to go and check out a home invasion and go and checks out, the neighborhood gang war going on. Like, I don't
Right.
know. It seems like they have to do everything. And I think you need to carp, uh, penalize more. Does that make sense?
What do you mean penalize more? I mean,
Cart penalize, like cart. I'm saying it wrong, but I'm basically saying that, if we're going to have police officers that do traffic, then they only do traffic.
oh,
If you
okay, I
have
see.
police officers that are for, emergency quick response for like home invasions or burglars or domestic disputes, sure. And, things that are actually lead to violence.
Hmm.
I think that, and I'm not 100% sure how the cops break it up and decide how to do things, but I just think that if you need to have better resources and better training and examples, that if someone does, mess up, they make a mistake, they conduct some kind of misconduct or police brutality, you gotta hold those people accountable. You just
Absolutely.
gotta.
Yeah. And you hit the nail on the head, so to speak, on that one. I think that the police officers should receive a lot more training. Uh, I don't know. I have not been able to find out how long an officer has to go to PTI or Police Training Institute. Or that's the state of Illinois. I don't know about other states. How long you actually have to attend a schooling to become a police officer. But I think in the state of Illinois, it's like 13 weeks. Okay. So
Okay.
that's an
Like three
equivalent.
months.
Yeah, that's an equivalent to like Marine Corps boot camp.
Yeah.
And I mean, you're not going to take somebody straight out of Marine Corps boot camp and say do your job,
Yeah.
because they have
At least you're
real.
you're not
Huh?
supposed to.
Yeah,
You're not
yeah.
really
Well,
supposed to.
you're not supposed to, because they have no concept of what their job is. It's
Yeah.
just like corrections. In corrections, you had 6 weeks when I was there. You had 6 weeks of training up in Springfield in an academy that had nothing to do with prisons. Then you get dropped off at your institution, and they say, "Go get them, boys." I mean, it's like, okay, hey, you've got West Cell House 8 and 10 gallery. Good luck. you know. So I mean, you're like, what the heck? I mean, for the first 6 months you're there, you have no idea. I've
Hmm.
seen brand new officers just basically, literally, insult one of the major gang chiefs.
Oh
Okay,
wow.
yeah, I mean, and we had gang chiefs. We had the number one Latin king. We had the
Yeah.
Metros. I mean, big people. And
I'm sure. I'm sure.
you tell one of these guys the wrong thing, they're probably going to find your head rolling down the gallery.
Jesus.
Yeah, I mean, and I've seen where one guy, just basically insulted I believe it was the Metro chief for the state, and it was like, oh my God, we got to get him out of here. He was brand new, man. I mean, 3 weeks into the job,
I had no idea.
and
No
had
idea what
no
he was
idea.
doing.
Yeah, I had no idea what this guy was
Yeah.
about, what he was doing. There was no de-escalation training. Okay.
Hmm.
When I was about halfway through my career, we got a director that came up with the term verbal judo. Okay. So I don't know if you've heard that before, but
I've never heard it, but
okay,
I have an idea. Yeah.
it is basically verbalizing and de-escalating a situation. Okay.
Okay.
I mean, there was one time, for example, I was up on a gallery by myself, and the one guy that he was the gallery chief, if you will. I was locking him up, and he goes, "Hey, he was late for lockup," and he goes, "Am I going to get a ticket?" I'm like, "Yeah, you're going to get a ticket." No, I'm not. I turn around. Dude. I was surrounded by his organization about 10 to 15 deep by myself on a gallery, and I look over to the tire. They're not there. I
You
mean,
ain't giving that guy a ticket.
I ain't giving him a ticket. I did some serious verbal judo. I tap danced my ass off that gallery.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that's It's a very, yeah, I think that there's a lot of that, especially you see it in the Marine Corps too. You know, people come out very hot-headed, and they don't understand. Now, there's a way the Marine Corps teaches you how things go, and there's a way that how things really go.
Right.
Um, like I think one, just for an example that people don't understand, is that, like, you know, a second lieutenant technically outranks a sergeant major. I think everyone knows that.
Yeah. Well, I'd hope.
I think everyone knows that technically a second lieutenant outranks a sergeant major. But if a
Right.
sergeant major tells a second lieutenant to do something, that second lieutenant likely does it like really quickly, and oh yes, yes, sergeant major, and like
Yeah.
walks away.
Right.
And people don't understand that relationship. At least you don't understand it right away, and especially when you come in from, you know, you're new. You just think like the officers are in charge and the enlisted are just we listen to the officers, and no one understands, you know, there's billet, the rank structure, and how it all works and how it comes together until you're in that atmosphere for a while. I mean, I've heard plenty of times from people in the Marine Corps that just when you're learning your job itself, that, you know, you go through your training, your school, and you learn your job or whatever. Then you get to the fleet and get to your unit, and you start talking about what you learned in school, and they're like, yeah, forget like half of that. You don't need that.
Right.
That's outdated. That makes no sense. And it really does. And it depends on what unit you go to and what they do at that unit. Like everywhere is different. So I think that's true for, I mean, I've heard cops tell me that too. Ex-cops, they told me like the same thing. You know, we go through these training and then we show up on the force, and they're like, that's stupid. We don't do any of that. And I mean, there was one guy, I forgot his name exactly, but he was on the JRE, the Joe Rogan Experience. And his first day on the job, he basically got part of like one of the most corrupt police forces known. And he said the first day on the job, they took him out and they went to this like gang member's house, and the police officer he was training with he was like trying to get him to pay him some money or some drugs or something, and the gang member didn't, and he threw him out the building.
Oh,
Just threw him out the building right in front of the guy. He was like, that was my first day on the job. They just threw this guy off a roof because he didn't pay them enough money or something like that. And the guy has a whole, I mean, the guy, he was on the police force for eight years, but he openly, I mean, he went to jail afterwards, and he wrote a book when he got out, but he basically was saying that he's like, man, when you get into an environment and everyone's on board with this environment, everyone's just, this is how it is. This is the way it goes. And if you try to change that or try to do the right thing, people are not fond of you. When people are used to a level of standard or a certain level of living or a certain level of privileges, and you come in there and try to threaten that, they do not respond kindly to you. And I think that that's true for any human being in any atmosphere that you go into. I mean, if I start a new job, and, you know, after I get done my training and my new job, they tell me, hey, this way is actually dangerous. We don't do it this way. But then I join a team and everyone on that team does it the quote unquote dangerous way because they are telling me it's actually not dangerous. This is more effective and we can get done quicker. If I'd be like, well, boss, my whole team is doing it the wrong way, my teammates are probably not going to like me. I'll probably just put my head down and be like, oh, okay, sir, let's get this done.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, and that's a problem. I mean, with the state, you know, back to Mr. Rothbard, you know, that is the problem with the state. It is, you know, the status quo. It is, you know, what happens is the way we do it. And eventually it starts snowballing and eventually getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And I think we're seeing that in society today, you know, where the state is actually getting more corrupt and more and bigger, not more bigger, but bigger, you know, and it's getting to the point where it's really kind of scary, you know?
Yeah. And then, I mean, we basically right now we've created a market for legislation. People from different companies from all over our country and even in other countries will do their best to lobby and get fund any politician they need to. I mean, you can look at I mean, I think everyone, Democrat and Republican, can probably say that Hillary Clinton's a corrupt politician. I think that's the kind of the standard now, I would say. But if you look at her, I mean, she basically got 250 million dollars from the Saudi Arabian government that were donated to her charity,
Charity, right?
and
Well, I mean, you
it's
got
like,
you
okay.
go look at politicians. I mean, it's and not taking anything away from the president or not taking away anything from any type of secretary of state or governor. Okay, for example, in the state of Illinois, we had a billionaire. Okay, run for office for governor
Mhm.
and won. He had billions at his disposal and wanted to go after a government job. Okay. My question is why? Okay. He's
Some
not
people want
making,
power over money.
well, is it, or did you get more money from power?
True. I
I
think, yeah,
mean, if
you never
you're
know.
working for, $100,000 a year, but yet, that's what you're making off your savings account, you
Hmm.
know, uh, why would you even bother going in? I mean, like Donald Trump, for example. Donald Trump's a very rich man. He's a very smart businessman.
Yeah.
Why would you want to take on the issues and the problems of being a president of the United States?
Well, I don't know. I think Trump's a little bit interesting. I've heard,
I
no,
like him.
I've,
Yeah.
I've heard, I like his rhetoric. I would say I like his rhetoric. I think, I think one of my favorite things about him is that a lot of people think he is a clown or they think he is a doofus. And I'd rather that rhetoric be on the leader of the free world, because then people will second guess about sending their kids to go die in a pointless war across seas for a man that is considered a doofus or a clown.
Yeah,
I think
true.
I like that. And but I think that I'm not really too sure. I heard Donald Trump actually puts on this facade that he was super rich, but he actually wasn't as rich and flashy as people thought he was. I mean, now this to the level between me and you, he's a rich man.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
But I think partially that, I mean, Donald Trump, I mean, from the 90s was talking about running for president on Oprah Winfrey show.
Yeah.
So, I mean, this is something that it seemed like he had in his mind for a long time. I'm not really for sure on his goal or rhetoric, but I kind of think it was more, in my opinion, he's very egotistical. If you
Oh,
bash on
right.
him in any way, he'll come at you with everything, and he does not care if you're a Republican, a Democrat. If you worked for him if Mike Pence came out tomorrow and said something that could be perceived as an insult to Donald Trump, he'd probably fire him right there and be like, "Get
I,
out of here, you
I,
fired."
I don't even know if he can fire the vice president. Is that
I don't
true?
know how that works. I really actually don't know how that would work, but
Yeah.
I know that he's, if anyone insults him in any way, he'll find you and he'll come after you and he'll
Right.
probably make you look worse. And I think that it's part of his ego, and I think that's why he maybe wanted to become president. It's the most powerful position probably in our
In the
world right
world.
now.
Right.
So I think that plays a part into it. I think I honestly do believe, in some level, he has a little bit of a heart. I think he does care at some level, maybe
Mm.
probably not as much as a normal person, but I think at some level he does care. I mean, for example, he talks when he was talking about so when the corporate press was basically pushing that the Syrian president Assad was gassing his own people, he didn't fire any missiles or anything. It wasn't until the next day there was pictures of children that were hit by the gas, and that's when Donald Trump was like, "Yo, no, we're firing missiles." And then it came out that it was all a lie. Assad was not gassing his own people, and Trump felt very bad. And you don't actually see presidents that actually feel bad for killing innocent people. And
Right.
as
Right.
much as I still think it's a crime, and maybe he should face some sort of trial for it. I'm not sure, but I think having that sort of attitude is a lot more welcoming to me than people that will bomb and destroy multiple different nations and then not even lose sleep over it the next day, and actually
Obama.
brag about it on national television. Hillary Clinton bragged
What?
about it on national television as she joked with the reporter that we just, we killed Gaddafi. She was bragging about that on CNN, and it was a joke to her. And even though Libya is literally slavery has been brought back to the country. It was the richest country in Africa. Now it's on all-out war. There's slavery, people being traded on a slave trade, people dying and from just normal illnesses that you can easily get taken care of. Like the country's in shambles now because of their foreign policy. And I'd rather someone, feel, at least present themselves as they feel bad about these terrible things than
I just don't think
rhetoric.
Donald Trump is all that compassionate, though. I mean, honestly.
Sure.
I mean, he is a businessman. He is a shrewd businessman.
Yeah, very shrewd.
Right. But, I mean, which is, I think, what our country needed, honestly. I mean, it's something that, I mean, Donald Trump, I think he was needed. I didn't vote for him in 2016.
Mm-hmm.
I believe I even voted for Gary Johnson, if I'm not mistaken. But
I think that's a very a compelling argument for why people voted for Trump. I think he was this outsider that came in and he acted like he was not the establishment, and everyone was against the establishment. I mean, if it wasn't Donald Trump, it was probably going to be Jeb Bush. That means Jeb Bush and a Clinton were going to run against each other in an election. And it's like, this is our options. We've already had this family in charge before, some of them twice. Yeah. And now you're telling me our only options are them again?
Right.
So Donald Trump comes in there and he just starts, not swinging, like basically swinging haymakers at these people.
Oh, yeah.
Insulting them, slamming them, dogging them every chance he gets. And I think that is why a lot of people like Donald Trump. They didn't some people probably liked his policies about, build the wall or end the wars and some things like that. But I think the main reason is he was not that typical politically correct politician, and he was going in there and saying exactly what he wanted to these people that live on their high towers and
these posh politicians.
And I think that's what a lot of people liked about him more, and especially the way our culture is moving against like this whole woke PC. We got to be sensitive against everybody. And Donald Trump went in there and was like, no, I'm going to say what I want. I'm a rich white man and I'm going to get to the top and I don't care who I hurt on the way there. And I think it resonated with a lot of people.
Yeah. I'm glad he is president. I mean, like I said, I didn't vote for him, but I am glad he is there.
Mm-hmm.
My stock's taken off. I mean, that's sad to say, but people like money, absolutely. And I think that Donald Trump is doing very well for the economy. I mean, I think even today the market is up again, which is really kind of an odd thing too, because our market is blowing up. Okay. But yet our small businesses are dying.
I think it's the result of a fake economy. I mean, I think, for example, so this is how at least the easiest way for me to explain it is, if I have a baseball card, actually, no, I'll skip that. All I'm going to say is that if I have a bunch of savings in my bank account, let's just say I have, $20,000, and but the next person over, they just bought a $20,000 car and they have no savings. So now when the government actually prints money, and they just printed like the most they've ever printed in human history, which was like over $2 trillion worth of money. Dang. And so that means that the value of the US dollar goes down. Mm-hmm. So the guy that was saving his money, just trying to save it, had $20,000. Now the value of that $20,000 has gone down, and the guy that actually bought a car for $20,000, the price of that actually goes up with inflation. Right. So now he can turn around and sell that car for $25,000 right now, and the person that was saving his money is actually losing value in the dollars that he saves. So these companies, I mean, they have a bunch of assets and that's basically how they run. They have a crap ton of assets. That's how the economy works. So when people that are investing in stock, they buy assets, and all of a sudden this inflation kicks in, this cost of stock goes up, but the value of the dollar actually decreases. And that's why you see these small businesses they can't keep a footing in this economy anymore. But the stock prices and people that trade gain because the assets actually get more expensive.
Wow. That's interesting. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, it's anyway. I'll tell you what, dude, we've been chatting for an hour and a half. You do realize this, right?
Yeah. I mean, I don't really have. I don't care, man. I got.
Yeah, it's no, I mean, but yeah, I mean, it's crazy. I don't know if you want to discuss way off from economy and everything, but I don't know if you want to discuss anything with the Ryan Whitaker stuff.
Oh,
Because I did listen to your guys' episode of number 70, I believe.
yeah.
With his brother, and I'm telling you, I've told everybody. I mean, that almost made me cry. I mean,
I'll be
that
honest. I'm glad there was no video in that
oh,
one because there's a couple times I didn't full out cry, but I was probably about to a
yeah.
couple
I
times.
mean, it was like, dang, that was
Um,
in my opinion. And I haven't listened to the next two episodes, but in my opinion, that episode 70 is probably your guys' best. You know,
I mean, we've got a lot of good feedback from it, so it's starting to look that way. For us, we've got a lot more people that reached out and commented on that one more than any other one we've done. So it's looking like that for us too. Um, I'll just say that it's the brother of Ryan Whitaker. If you guys don't, if anyone that doesn't know about this, there was an incident between Ryan Whitaker and the Phoenix Police Department here back in May 21st of this year, 2020.
mm-hmm.
Um, and I mean, you can pretty much, if you just Google Ryan Whitaker, you'll be able to see the body cam footage. It's out there, and you can find it really fast. I'll just say, from watching the videos, my opinion, I feel like that Ryan Whitaker was justifiably murdered by the Phoenix Police Department. There's a lot of media silence on this one. It doesn't get as big coverage as the more racially tensioned ones than before. So we reached out on my podcast, Biting the Bullet, to Stephen Whitaker, who's the brother of Ryan Whitaker, and we just gave him a platform to speak on the issue. It's a Now I would say most of our podcast is a little bit more funny. At least we try to be, or goofy at least. So that episode number 70, is a lot more serious. It's not really joking that much. We basically just get a backstory of Stephen Whitaker, get a little bit of a backstory on Ryan, and then we actually go a little bit in depth on what happened that day. And it's a little hard hearing a brother talk about basically watching their brother be murdered on camera. So
Yeah,
and then how the reaction of the state is. I mean, they're still under investigation. It's been 3 or 4 months since the incident, so it's, in my opinion, I don't understand what they're investigating. The two officers that were involved in this are back and working at the police force, getting a paycheck every week now.
now they're not back on the. They're not on the street. They're actually
No,
on desk duty,
no.
right? Okay.
Yeah, they're at some restricted job. I think they're basically doing paperwork at this moment. But yeah, it's still, in my opinion, it's sad. So first, I would say you should probably go watch the video if you haven't seen it yet. Just if you look Ryan Whitaker up, it pops up really quickly. And then if you want, you can go listen to Stephen Whitaker, his brother, actually talk about it. He was on the news a couple times, but he only briefly talks for a couple seconds. At least you see on the news. This episode, we gave him basically a full hour to talk to us and go over the incident, and it's one of my favorite episodes we've done, but also one of the saddest. Fair warning.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, the whole situation was brutal. I mean, period.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And the one, I mean, first of all, I mean, the cop was probably scared. I don't know how long he'd been on the force or anything, uh, but he seemed relatively new, and I mean, they showed up to the door with their guns drawn, first of all. That was, first flag, which was an
I would
alleged
say
noise.
I would say the first flag actually comes from the discussion between the operator and the
Well,
person complaining, because at first it was a noise complaint. The first time the neighbor called,
right.
it was a noise complaint. The cops didn't get there fast enough. The neighbor called again, and basically the operator, in my opinion, which you can hear this all in the video too, the operator upsells the crime, because the neighbor is basically still complaining that this is a noise complaint, and then the operator is the one that actually suggests, is this some sort of domestic dispute? And then the neighbor confirms it by saying, uh, if it gets you here faster, yes, it is.
Right.
And then right before the cops get out of the car and before they approach the apartment, they actually confirmed to each other that this was a BS call. And the operator, they don't know what's about to happen. They don't know they don't think it's a domestic dispute, but they think it's kind of BS, and it's just some angry neighbor calling about a noise complaint.
But I mean, okay, so if their intention, if their thought patterns were, what, this is BS, it's a noise complaint, the guy's in there probably just playing his video game way too loud, or, maybe they're having a little party, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Why would you arrive at a door that you think is a BS call with your weapons drawn?
Yeah, and the door has a peephole. Why would you step to the side where no one can see you?
Exactly.
So, like, if someone, let's just say, the Stephen Whitaker told us that a couple nights before there was someone knocking on the door of their apartment in the middle of the night, and they had no idea who it was. And Ryan went out there to look, and no one was there. No one was at the door. So, and then a couple nights later, someone's knock on the door. He looks at the peephole. He can't see who's out there. He has no idea that there's two cops standing on the side.
Yeah.
So when he opens the door and the cops have a flashlight just right in his face, so you can't tell, like, your eyes have to adjust. Like, it takes a second for you to, like, oh God, like, who the hell is just flashing a light at me?
Right.
And he stepped out, and in his right hand he had his firearm, and
which is legal in the state of Arizona.
Right. Yes, that is illegal. You are allowed to carry a firearm pretty much almost anywhere unless it's designated you can't in the state of Arizona. And there's hardly, the gun laws are very lenient here in Arizona. And in my opinion, it appears that Ryan realizes it's the police. He throws up his left hand while trying to put his gun on the ground, or at least squat down, and it looks like he's trying to surrender at some way. And the cop, I guess it would be to his left when he steps out,
right,
is the one that shoots him 2 or 3 times into the back. And I don't even think Ryan ever knew that cop was there.
I mean, I mean, even just now talking about it,
Yeah.
I mean, it's.
And probably the saddest part for me in the video was when they pull the girlfriend. He has a girlfriend in there, and they pull her out of the apartment, and they are talking to her literally while Ryan is bleeding out. I mean, you can hear what I'm going to guess is probably his last breath. You can hear it on the body cam footage as that man bleeds out and dies.
And I think I've talked to you about this before. Is it a law, or is it an issue that police cannot render medical assistance?
I'm not really 100% sure for the area that I live in, which is, if anyone doesn't know, I live in Arizona, the Phoenix area. And now it is a law in some places. I'm not sure. I'll probably have to look into that, but there's some police unions, because they don't want to suffer or be liable for anything if someone tries to perform first aid or immediate medical assistance, and they do something wrong, or it's not the proper technique or something. You can actually sue the police officers for incorrect. I guess it's called malpractice or whatever.
Right.
But I mean, the same is true for a common citizen too. I mean, if someone's
Uh,
bleeding on the ground,
yeah. Now you cannot be sued for the Good Samaritan Act. Okay. So basically, you can render medical assistance to somebody.
that
It,
changes from state to state. That's not across the board.
I was thinking that was across the board. I
Yeah,
mean,
so I'm not. I mean,
well,
in
okay.
a lot of police stations, a lot of police officers are trained in first aid, and I think at least half of the places in the country, I think they do immediately. I mean, if you looked at the Jacob Blake incident when he was shot, almost 6 or 7,
He
fired
was
at 7 times,
actually
hit 4.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Thank you. Thank you.
when you looked at that case, I mean, almost immediately the cops rendered first aid before there was any first responders there.
Okay. And
Um,
what I'd like to say too is I would rather be sued for trying to save somebody's life than I would
yeah.
than to be sued for killing somebody or letting somebody die.
Yeah,
You know.
yeah. So, but in this case, with the Ryan Whitaker case, the girlfriend is basically she said that there's no domestic violence that was going on. Ryan would
Right.
never hit me, and she confirms this multiple times. She states over and over that they were playing video games and making salsa. So it looked like they were just being a little too loud in their apartment complex, having fun, and and she is trying to beg and plead with the officer
Yeah.
to go over there and check on Ryan because he's laying there bleeding out.
Yeah.
And the cop basically tells her, I'm going to go with the side that he's not. And they're not treating him.
Yeah.
They're letting him die or basically bleed out and die. I mean, obviously they probably called the ambulance and the ambulance is on the way, but I don't know how long that's going to be. 10,
20
5,
minutes. Oh,
10, 15,
everything in the
20
Phoenix area is
minutes.
20 minutes. So,
Yeah, so
right.
who knows how long it's going to take them, and seconds like that really matter when after you shoot someone 2 or 3 times. Like this is,
Yeah.
it's a pretty and you have a short window of operations to save his life, and at least if you did make a mistake like that, which in my opinion it was either a mistake or a bad judgment call or
Fear.
murder,
Fear.
and yeah, at least you have to do something to try to redeem yourself with some redeemable quality, and just letting a man bleed out and die after you shoot him, oh my god, I think that's like, what are you doing?
That I mean,
Like,
it's yeah. I mean, granted, okay, the officer that fired the shot, he was not involved with the girlfriend at all. But I think in the video, if I'm not mistaken, you see him in the background kind of standing there,
I'm
you know,
not sure if you see him standing there, but it looks like he goes
or
inside
he,
the
or
apartment.
maybe he goes inside the apartment. I can't remember without actually pulling it up. But, I mean, come on, man. I mean, dang, you just froze up. Come on. No, come on.